You're thinking about going solar, but you need help deciding if you want to mount your solar panels on the roof or on the ground like this one. Today, I'm going to give you a roadmap to making that decision.
When we first started planning our solar build, I didn't know which way I would go. We had three options: the roof of the house, the roof of the barn, or where we ultimately chose, on the ground. When I first started planning this about 5 years ago, we didn't even have a barn yet or a flat terrace option. We had raw land all around the house and it was covered with trees and really steep terrain. So I had to figure out how to think this through, which is why I'm sharing this with you so you can benefit from the process I struggled through. In the end though, taking the time to think this through thoroughly was well worth it, and I'm very happy with where we ended up today. Here's what I learned. Both roof mount and ground mount have significant advantages and drawbacks. A lot of it comes down to how much land you have, how much roof space you have, your roof orientation, how much shading you have, and what your long-term plan looks like. Even if you're brand new to solar, this will save you time, money, and frustration, and help you decide which mounting option makes the most sense for your situation. Are you building a completely off-grid system, or will you be grid-tied? And if you are grid-tied, do you have net metering in your area? Net metering is when you have the option to sell unused power from your system back to the utility company. So let's just say if you don't have batteries, you are using power at night when there's no sun, but you can offset that power usage by selling back daytime power that you generate when you're at work and not using very much power. But all of that is for a different video. For us, we wanted a mostly off-grid system, but with the option to turn the grid tie connection on for backup whenever we needed it. I've made several videos explaining our future plans for a backup generator and why we started out with grid power while we were building the house and during the first few years before we finally built our solar power system. I'll link those videos in the description below. Another big question you need to answer is, who's doing the work? You really have three options here. A, hire a company to handle everything: consulting, design, and installation. This is the easiest route, but also the most expensive. B, you could go fully DIY, assuming you have the time, energy, and the willingness to learn everything, or if you already have an electrical background. And C, take the hybrid approach, which is what we did. I spent years literally doing my own research, and once I had a solid idea of what I wanted, I hired a consultant, just not to do any of the work, just to help me pull the system together based on our specific geography and my desires, and our usage, of course. And they produced the required drawings for the county permit and for the master electrician who ultimately wired everything together based on those plans. I built the ground mount rack system myself just with my wife, and we installed the solar panels on it and we did all of the trenching with the backhoe. But I did hire someone with a really large excavator to handle the dirt work, or as we call it here on the ranch, the boulder work. We have a very high rock to dirt ratio, which makes grading extremely time consuming, and you need a really big machine to do that level of excavation. So we hired that part out. So as I've explained before in other videos, we took all of this dirt where we basically carved out this big ice cream scoop out of the side of the mountain to put the barn in, and we moved that dirt over right here where this terrace is now, and we built our solar array on that to get it up above the tree line. So even during winter solstice, we're able to stay above the long shadows from the trees. One of the biggest questions I see in the comments is, why didn't you mount the roof system on the barn? And that's a great question. So here's how we broke it down. The way our panels are mounted affects how much energy we produce, how easy the system is to maintain, and how expandable it is years down the road as we decide we want to add more power. Once it's built, changing it is really expensive, so this decision is worth slowing down and thinking through. Let's start with roof-mounted solar, because for a lot of people, that's the default choice. You've got lower upfront cost. You're using an existing structure, no steel racks, no concrete footings, and no trenching across the property for the wires. This is an efficient use of space. The panels are going to sit on a surface you already have instead of taking up your yard or your pasture or land that you need for other purposes. Roof mount is a much simpler install in many neighborhoods, especially in towns or subdivisions where ground mounts can trigger extra permitting or zoning hurdles. As long as your roof has good southern exposure, minimal shade, and plenty of life remaining in the roof, then roof-mounted solar makes a lot of sense. But there are real limitations. Some of the roof mounting challenges are you're locked into your roof's orientation and pitch. You don't get to choose the ideal angle, you get what your house gives you. Shading is harder to solve. A chimney, a neighbor's tall trees, or any unsolvable shading can impact production. Maintenance is harder. Cleaning the panels can be a real pain. Getting up on the roof, you got to get a ladder out, you have to get your hose and spray them off, and maybe a brush, some soapy water. It's not something you're going to look forward to doing. And if you have snow in your area, especially if you get a lot of snow, it can really be a pain in the ass because now you're getting up on a slippery, wet, potentially hazardous situation to clean the snow off fairly regularly. And troubleshooting issues means getting on the roof. So if this is a do-it-yourself project and you have any trouble, you may have to pull panels off to even access the back side where your wires are. And the roof condition matters a lot. If your roof needs replacement later, the panels have to come off, and that's not cheap. My first solar system back in 2007 on our old house was a grid-tied net metering system, and the roof was already getting a little bit old, so I re-roofed and had to add sister rafters to support the extra weight. It was a huge expense, but I knew I needed it done, and so I expanded the solar budget considerably to now add in a new roof to the equation. So if you've got an older roof and ground mount is an option, that might be your solution right there if you don't want to incur the expense of a roof at the same time as you're building your solar. So roof mounted systems work best when the roof is brand new or already close to perfect. Now let's talk about ground mount solar. This is the route we ultimately chose, and here's the reason why it attracts a lot of off-grid, rural, and large property owners. You get to choose the exact location. You can place the panels where the sun is best and not where the house happens to be. You have control over the orientation and the optimal tilt. That alone can noticeably increase annual production. It's much easier to maintain. Cleaning, snow removal, and inspections are safer at ground level. You can just walk out there. I just use a push broom and just drag the snow off. And I can get underneath there and just casual. I could go out there with my coffee in the morning and just walk around and just kind of look at my wiring and make sure everything's looking good. If I ever have an issue, it's super easy to troubleshoot compared to what a nightmare that is if it's on the roof. And we have room to expand. Our particular ground mount system has these cantilevers that stick off the end of the purlins. Well, you can add an extra set of those on the other side and get 2 panels right away with very little effort. And if we wanted to expand even further, these Sinclair ground mount systems are really endlessly expandable. But of course, there are trade-offs. So here's a few ground mount considerations. You're going to have higher upfront cost. You're paying for a steel rack, excavation, and in our case, really big concrete footings due to the wind load we have up here. The uplift on the wind at 70, 80 miles an hour is significant. It could rip your system right out of the ground if you don't plan accordingly. And then trenching. We had to add a long run from the solar array to the barn and then from the barn to the house. And that's expensive cable and that's an expensive trenching process. You need space, not just land, but land with good sun exposure year round. And it takes a lot more site planning. You're thinking about draining, snowdrift, vegetation, fencing, and access. For many people, the cost alone makes roof mounted the right call, and that's completely reasonable. So how did I personally decide? I looked at 3 main things. Number 1, land availability. We have plenty of open space, and with the excavation for the barn, we were able to build a flat terrace with full sun, above the long shadows from the trees, even during winter solstice. That immediately made ground mount viable. Number 2, orientation and roof penetrations. Our roof lines aren't ideal, and I didn't want to design around compromises and risk leaking if I didn't have to. We had a brand new roof, and I didn't want to poke a bunch of holes in it. And ultimately, you're going to have to change that roof out. So if you're planning on staying on your property forever, like we are, you're going to have to change that roof someday, and that's an expense down the road I can deal with much more easily without pulling solar off first. Number 3 is long-term plans. This is an off-grid property, and I wanted maximum production, easy access, and the ability to expand later. Once I stepped back and looked at the whole picture, the answer became pretty clear. For us, ground mounting wasn't just about avoiding roof penetrations. It was about easy access to adjust the angle as we go throughout the year to maximize production. And my wife and I go out quarterly and adjust the system based on where the sun is tracking across the sky. It definitely makes a difference. I can see it right away when we make an adjustment, my production increases. So we get better year-round production, easier maintenance, and flexibility for future growth. Yes, it costs a lot more up front, and if you want to see the full cost breakdown, I'll put a link to that video in the description. But over the life of the system, the benefits made a lot of sense for us. So as you're zeroing in on your decision-making process, here's a simple way to think about it. Roof mount may be right if your roof has good sun exposure, it's in good condition, and you want the lowest upfront cost. Ground mount may be right if you have open land, you want maximum production, and easier maintenance, adjustability, and long-term expansion options matter to you. I would say overall, neither option is better across the board. It's really about what fits your particular situation.
We even went with this light color pea gravel on the ground underneath our array to reflect a little bit more light onto the bottom of these bifacial panels, eking out just a little bit more production than we would have had these been on the roof. So for us, ground mount was the way to go. Final checklist of the video. Share this with someone else you know might be trying to decide between ground and roof. Like the video and subscribe. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.